What's up EFD squad? Today we're bringing you our top 10 players who didn't see out their careers exactly the way they would have liked. Let's get started. 10. Steven Gerrard. Although he didn't actually retire from the game, Steven Gerrard's footballing career was effectively over after he left Liverpool in 2015, and it couldn't have ended in worse fashion. Having slipped up in the title race and narrowly missing out on Premier League glory in 2014, Gerrard was determined to put things right, having regained world-beating form under Brendan Rodgers that season. Also back in the Champions League for the first time in 5 years, the Liverpool captain could sense the magic coming back to Anfield. But it wasn't to be. The Reds crashed out at the group stage, finishing below Bâle, and after announcing he'd be leaving the club, Gerrard had a disastrous finish to the campaign. In his final Liverpool United derby, the skipper was brought on at half-time and lasted just 38 seconds before being sent off for a stamp on Ander Herrera. And in his very last game for the club, he scored the consolation goal in a humiliating 6-1 loss to Stoke. It was the first time the Reds had conceded that many in a league game in 52 years. Embarrassing all round. 9. Gary Neville. Unlike Liverpool, Manchester United were actually on a bit of a roll when captain Gary Neville retired back in 2011, but the veteran right-back's departure from the game was far from glorious, unfortunately. Plagued by injury in his final years at Old Trafford, Neville made his last appearance for United after a 2-month layoff. The defender later admitted he should have been sent off in his second to last match, and when Alex Ferguson brought him back to play West Brom on New Year's Day, Neville knew he wasn't ready. At half-time, the captain made his decision to retire while sitting in the toilet. "I just wanted to get home and disappear," he later said, clearly convinced he was no longer physically or mentally fit to play football any longer. Within a month, he announced his retirement with immediate effect, just months before United secured a record 19th league title. 8. Sebastian Deisler. When he burst onto the scene in 1998, German winger Sebastian Deisler was expected to achieve great things. And when he retired just 9 years later, Bayern Munich kingpin Uli Hoeneß hailed him as one of the best players Germany's ever produced. So, what went wrong in the years between? After scoring one of the Bundesliga's all-time great goals when he was just a teenager, all eyes were on Deisler, but not long later he ruptured his cruciate ligament, and by the age of 23 had already sat out on the sidelines 15 times. However, this didn't stop him helping Hertha Berlin to the DFB Pokal in 2001 and earning a big money move to Bayern Munich the following year. But in 2003, Deisler was admitted to the Max Planck Institute in Munich for depression, a situation made worse by the huge attention it received from the media. He came back from his illness and won 3 league and cup doubles with Bayern, but his ongoing injury problems meant he never held down his place in the side for long. In 2007, aged just 27, Deisler announced his retirement, having made just 4 league appearances that season. 7. Patrick Kluivert. For a player whose professional career kicked off in such explosive fashion, Patrick Kluivert's retirement from the game couldn't have been any less remarkable. Breaking into Louis van Gaal's Ajax team at the age of 18, Kluivert was one of Dutch football's brightest ever prospects, and that season, the striker scored 18 league goals, finishing second top goal scorer to Ronaldo, and fired the winning goal in the Champions League final. Kluivert ended up transferring to Barcelona, where he excelled at first, but was eventually sold when his former teammate Frank Rijkaard took over as manager in 2004. From there on, he looked like a distinctly average player, turning out for an underperforming Newcastle side before moving to Valencia, where he scored just 1 in 11 appearances, struggling for game time. He retired in 2008, aged just 31, having played a cameo role in a Lille side who finished 7th in Ligue 1. 6. David Bentley. Now for a player who retired because he'd simply grown to hate the game. David Bentley was one of England's biggest hopes when he made his senior debut for Arsenal in 2003. What a sorry state of affairs. And over the next few years was lauded for his intelligence on the ball and sweet right foot, which many compared to David Beckham. Definitely wasn't his intelligence off the pitch, that's for sure. A footballer who loved the game because it allowed him to have fun, wages and trophies were seemingly further down Bentley's list of priorities, and at the age of just 29, having played no football for over a year, he decided to call it quits. For a man who had cost Tottenham 15 million just 6 years earlier, there was no big send-off. Bentley simply rang up Sky Sports News and explained the decision while holding back the tears, saying, "I've given up on football," stating it had become boring and predictable. Maybe that was just his playing style. 5. Espen Baardsen. Spurs fans may remember Espen Baardsen, the Norwegian-American goalkeeper who made a total of 29 appearances for the club in the late 90s. Just a month and a half older than Buffon, Baardsen decided to throw in the towel just aged 25, having been a bench warmer for most of his career. Following a disastrous loan move to Everton, where he conceded 4 in his only appearance for the Toffees, Baardsen was signed by Sheffield United, but when negotiating pay with manager Neil Warnock, he was offered wages lower than those of a tube driver and decided there and then to call it quits. He later said they'd been living out of hotels and suitcases for months, and also claimed that his lowest point of the whole ordeal came in a Sheffield Tesco. Not exactly what dreams are made of. Fortunately, Baardsen has since enjoyed a far more successful career as a finance analyst. 4. George Best. A man who was the definition of flair, there is no doubting the majestic talents of Georgie Best. Still considered by many to be the greatest footballer the British Isles has ever produced, Best helped inspire Manchester United to 2 league titles and a first ever European Cup by the time he reached 22. As well as being a prolific scorer and a frightening dribbler, Best was nicknamed El Beetle for his rock star image, but it was his party lifestyle that eventually caught up with him. In 1972, he announced his retirement from the game aged just 26. And though he came back almost immediately, the following year he was transfer listed by the club, who were tired of his hedonistic excesses. When he left, the club was heading for relegation, and when he resurfaced in the English game, it was at Stockport County, who were in the process of dropping out of the Football League altogether. This was a sign of things to come. He became the ultimate journeyman, and his travels took him from LA to Brisbane to Nuneaton. Suffering from increasingly severe alcoholism, he never recovered the form of his early years. Best eventually retired for good in 1984, and just months later was handed a 3-month prison sentence for drunk driving, assaulting a police officer and failing to answer bail. His public image was truly in tatters. 3. Zinedine Zidane. Undoubtedly one of the greatest players to step onto a pitch, Zinedine Zidane held the world in awe for almost his entire career. Still the only player to score the winner in a World Cup and Champions League final, Zizou left a sparkling legacy when he retired. But unfortunately for the Frenchman, he didn't cover himself in glory when he did so. Coming out of international retirement to captain France at the 2006 World Cup, Zidane dominated the tournament and took Les Bleus on a remarkable run to the final. Once there, he scored his 3rd goal of the summer from the spot to put his side in pole position to lift the cup. But we all know what happened next. Italy equalised, and in extra time, scorer Marco Materazzi made some underhand personal comments to Zidane. He reacted by headbutting the Italian defender and was duly sent off, and France lost on penalties. The worst possible way for a legend of his standing to bow out. 2. Diego Maradona. In at 2, we have another all-time legend. Diego Maradona was quite simply a magical footballer, and his heroic performances for Argentina and Napoli in particular will never be forgotten. But during his time in southern Italy, El Diego made decisions that would send him on a downward spiral. Having developed an unhealthy taste for the high life, Maradona was banned for 15 months by Napoli after testing positive for cocaine, and in 1991 left the club in disgrace. He then resurrected his career somewhat at Sevilla before coming out of international retirement in the build-up to the '94 World Cup. Argentina waited for their hero to produce the goods yet again, but sadly they were let down. That February, the forward's behaviour took an absurd turn and he shot 4 journalists outside of his house with an air rifle. This didn't stop him boarding the plane to America, but after an iconically deranged goal celebration in La Albiceleste's first match, heads were turned and he was found to be taking the illegal stimulant ephedrine. He finally retired 4 years later, having become as much of a running joke in the media as he had been a wonderful footballer. 1. Mario de Castro. Our final story is also by far the most harrowing. In fact, all the others on the list can count themselves lucky not to have ended their career the way Mario de Castro did. Had he carried on playing past the age of 26, people may still be talking about him as one of the all-time great strikers, as the Brazilian boasted an unbelievable average of 1.95 goals per game over the course of his career. To put that in perspective, Pelé averaged just 0.96. De Castro played exclusively for Atlético Mineiro, helping the club to 3 league titles, and in 1930 he became the first player from outside of Rio or Sao Paulo to receive a call-up to the national team. However, clearly a stubborn man, he turned down the opportunity to play at the inaugural World Cup because he wasn't considered first choice. And his strong principles would come into play a year later, as Mineiro came from 3-0 down to beat rivals Vila Nova and seal a 3rd title in 6 years, with De Castro scoring all 4 goals. But in the ecstatic aftermath of the victory, celebrations got out of hand and tragically culminated in one of the club's directors shooting a Vila Nova fan dead. De Castro is also a qualified doctor, just in case you didn't think he was talented enough, and he judged the incident so disgraceful he decided to retire that moment in protest. At least he's a man of his word. So guys, they are our top 10 players who retired on a low. Have we missed anyone out? Have we judged anyone unfairly? As always, let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later. Sayonara.